horror mastermind Lucio Fulci brings us City of the Living Dead, also known as Gates of Hell, also known by a whole bunch of other names that are too kind of numerous to list, but they're probably the two most recognisable names. But this, of course, Italian zombie movie, part of the kind of the Gates of Hell trilogy by Fulci, came out in 1980, and this is being released in 4K by Arrow Video on the 25th of March 2024, and they've asked me to review this movie for that kind of release ultimately. Now, I have seen this movie a long time ago, and I have to be honest with you, I wasn't a big fan. I was quite young when I watched it, but so we've rewatched it for this review. I was a big fan of zombie flesh eaters, however. Now, what did I think of this movie after a rewatch? But let's give you a synopsis first of all. So, in this movie, it's classed as a zombie film, but I would say arguably they're more kind of ghosts, but with zombie-like appearances. But anyway, we have this clergyman who commits suicide in on consecrated ground, and therefore opens the gate of hell. And we have a couple of protagonists. We got a this reporter, and he teams up with this kind of woman who has had a psychic vision and was actually buried alive. Just watch the film. And they team up with a couple also from the fictional town of Dunwich, which of course is a reference to H.P. Lovecraft. And the four of these people are trying to investigate what has happened to try and find a solution for this kind of growing problem of the dead seemingly coming back to life in this kind of town of Dunwich, and who are plaguing the locals there. And there's other kind of supernatural events that are happening, and people getting, you know, kind of influenced, and weird things happening. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what works with this movie. Now, again, after rewatching it, I think I have a little bit more of an appreciation for it. Now, what I think this movie does offer is a real kind of great atmosphere. It definitely, you know, you definitely have that like Fulci kind of flavour with it. You know, you can tell it's one of his movies, and it really has. I mean, zombie films these days, there's so many of them been produced, they kind of have lost their bite, so to speak. But when you watch something like this, it's kind of like genuinely quite unsettling at times. The build-up, this kind of like the moans, the kind of the lurking in the darkness and kind of coming out. The way it's done is genuinely quite unsettling, and these things do seem very threatening. Now, that when people, you know, the characters in this movie see these kind of creatures, they there's genuinely a sense of kind of unsettling fear, and I think this is what this movie does the best, is create a this dread atmosphere. That is I personally feel this movie's biggest achievement. I still prefer Zombie Flesh Eaters, if I'm honest, as a film overall. I actually think that's one of my favourite zombie films. But I would argue maybe this one has a kind of a better sense of foreboding in some ways, because of the kind of the build-up, because of the kind of like the way this movie is shot. The cinematography, these kind of it's a lot more in kind of darkness and people kind of like appearing at the dark, and I think maybe a better use of kind of sound effects and things maybe. The movie also has some very kind of gory sequences, and as I say, it's not just kind of just zombies. We have this kind of like this evil force that is coming out of this kind of town of Dunwich, and is, you know, affecting people in different ways. We have flying maggots, we have people seemingly go into kind of murderous rages and kill the girlfriend's boyfriend with a drill that you see in glorious detail. So it's quite a sort of disturbing film, and there are quite a lot of kind of like well done kind of gory sequences. I mean, we are talking Fulci here. So, you know, we're getting people being grabbed by the back of their head and their brains being ripped out, all in kind of like glorious practical effects detail, and obviously a lot of the time they're using kind of like, let's just say, realistic effects. I mean, obviously it's pretty good. I think it holds up in regards to the VFX even now. You know, obviously it being a 1980 film, I would say many of the effects hold up even now and are probably better than some of the effects you'll see in kind of like modern zombie type kind of movies. I have to say I quite liked our mix of protagonists. I never feel like you have a true central character in this one. I guess our team of the reporter and kind of this girl who's had psychic visions arguably are the main characters, but we do spend quite a lot of time with kind of other characters as well, so you feel this is more of an ensemble piece to a large degree. But I did quite like our kind of central characters. I kind of quite like their candour between the between the sort of the characters and stuff. So that was all quite enjoyable. And as I say, I think visually speaking, this movie is excellent. I do think it's, it really does hold up, and it's one of the kind of the more menacing kind of films. And we have a sequence towards the end where we kind of go into this underground kind of like tombs, and it's great. It looks fantastic. The set design looks very kind of spooky, and you'll get more of your kind of classic kind of zombies there. We also have like a central antagonist, and I think he's handled pretty well. But the movie does kind of leave stuff sort of somewhat open, it's kind of like you don't quite know. You feel like the characters are a little bit, in over their head and don't quite know what to do. So what doesn't work in this movie? So arguably, this movie has a little bit of moments where it gets a little bit kind of quieter, maybe a little bit even dull at times. The movie's pacing could be a little bit improved, or could have been improved in my opinion. So yeah, there are some sequences that just seem to kind of like be somewhat kind of redundant, be somewhat kind of, and somewhat drag a little bit here and there. There's been a lot of critique about the ending of this movie, it being very kind of ambiguous as to what's happened, and there's been various kind of rumours about what the actual reason for this was, and there's never really been a definitive answer. I don't have a problem necessarily with it. I do think the kind of like, how can I say this without really spoiling it? It's an old film, but the actual kind of conflict is resolved very quickly in that kind of final confrontation. It seemed a little bit too easy, if you ask me, and considering we're dealing with the dead, how it ended to me, I didn't think was particularly kind of satisfying, and that's not even before we get to the kind of like the ambiguous kind of final scene. The one thing that always bothered me with this film, and the reason why I kind of didn't like it to begin with, or liked it less, was the kind of like the disappearing and reappearing zombies. This is why I say they're kind of more ghosts, but I didn't like the effects, and it's just like you'll have like, effectively they'll stop the camera, someone will kind of move into frame and start it, and you'll have like these appearing and disappearing kind of zombies, and it looks silly to me. They're also a little bit inconsistent, I feel. We have zombies moving very kind of slowly, but then we'll have one that's kind of like jumping off a bridge like with great agility and things like that. So I felt like the actual kind of zombies, or whatever they are a little inconsistent, to be honest, about what they actually are. I mean, we're led to believe these are reanimated corpses rather than spirits, but they seem to be able to instantly disappear and reappear like they were immaterial ghosts, if that makes sense. So it's a bit like, I didn't feel like it was particularly logical, and there are some other kind of like things in this movie, and Fulci is, again, it's not like maybe it's one of his strong suits necessarily. You can arguably say this movie, there are some things here that don't make a huge amount of sense, but I think you probably watch Fulci movies more for the gore, the music, and the kind of the atmosphere. And one thing for a personal note, a lot of people like the zombies in this movie better than the kind of the other movies that he's done, like Zombie Flesh Eaters. I don't. I prefer the zombies in Zombie Flesh Eaters, to be honest with you. In this, I think the makeup on the actual zombies, it looks gross, but it just kind of looks like people with stuff on their face rather than kind of like emaciated flesh and stuff. So there you go. overall, it's still a fun movie. It's dripping with atmosphere, and obviously it's considered one of the kind of like the kind of seminal zombie movies to a degree. Arguably, I'd say it's more of just a supernatural movie, but I don't think it's as strong as Zombie Flesh Eaters, but I enjoyed this more on this rewatch compared to originally when I had watched it. So for me, this is a 6 out of 10. It is an above average kind of zombie film, I suppose, but I don't think it's a classic, if you ask me. Have you seen it? What's your opinion of this movie? Please do let me know, and I'll look forward to you next time. And please do check out Arrow's 4K edition of this, coming out on the 25th of March 2024. Again, 6 out of 10. Look forward to seeing you next time.